Hi, my name is Winsley, and welcome to my video diving into the screenshots I took from the 5th gameplay stream by the devs over at Age of Wonders 4. This is the one where they were continuing the game as the Mystic Elves, and they were playing in the mid-game. So we've got to see a lot of different things than what they've shown off previously. I think all the other gameplay streams started on turn 1, and then they got to like turn 10 through 20, something along those lines. Um, so yeah, we'll be talking more about diplomacy today, which is something that comes into play more in the mid game. We'll go over some more signature skills, and then we'll talk about the infestations, which really came into play in the mid game. The first thing we'll end up actually talking about is expanded governance. It's a really interesting addition that I think they made based off of feedback. So that's awesome. Important disclaimer, a lot of the numbers that we are looking at are from early versions of the game, so they are likely going to change before release and even after release, especially if Age of Wonders 4 follows a similar development cycle to Age of Wonders Planetfall. I'll be using timestamps below, so if for any reason you find one of the screenshots that I am talking about boring, you can always look at the list to jump ahead to things that you think would be more interesting to look at. I will be also posting a list of the images that I'll be talking about today on my thread on the official Age of Wonders 4 forums. So yeah, you can use that to kind of follow along with what we're going over here. For whatever reason, some of the images are too small and you can't quite read the details, you can use that link, which I'll put in the description below. So yeah, let's just jump into it. All right, so expanded government says that it increases the city cap by +1, and right now it's going to cost 200 Imperium to do that. And that is, I think, something that wasn't in the game in the previous builds that we saw on stream, but based on what the community was saying, the devs said, okay, we would like to give you the ability to just have more cities, but it's going to be expensive. It's going to take you time. It's not something you can do in like turn 20. You're not going to be able to have 10 cities by turn 20. I think it'll take you more like 40 turns to get up to that limit. But it is possible to just continually increase that cap by spending more and more Imperium on it. They seem to indicate that the cost is going to raise over time, although I don't think that means every turn that goes by that Imperium cost goes up. I think it means every time that you buy more expanded governments, that Imperium cost goes up. So maybe the first time it costs 200 Imperium, and then after that it costs 250 Imperium, or 300 Imperium, or 400 Imperium, and that cost just gets more and more and more as you control more stuff. And I don't think your Imperium income is going to increase through locations too much. You're supposed to get most of your Imperium from your Wizard's Tower, but there are other sources like some of the magic materials and other special resources, and maybe a location or two that I'm forgetting, but we may actually see later in the screenshots here. But yeah, I love that. It's great that they're considering things like this, and it makes me really interested to see what else we're going to see, what other kinds of changes we're going to see between now and release and after the release of Age of Wonders 4. Um, yeah, I think that's everything we wanted to say on that. This is a repeatable general right. Seems like there's some rights which are different than Empire skills, and I think that just means you can do it over and over and over again. I'm not sure if I see any others that had the same kind of outline around it, but there's probably others throughout this tree, right? After that, we have our diplomacy. So this is going to be a pretty extensive section. There's quite a lot of screenshots that I took relating to diplomacy, but I think there's a lot of interesting things, so I'm okay with spending a little bit more time on this section. The first thing that I noticed in this stream was they negotiated a wizard's bond pretty early on, which revealed the throne city of the other leader, which is incredibly valuable information. If you think you're going to betray them, knowing where their capital is means you know generally where the center of their empire is and where you want to be sending your army if you take their capital and I think you kill the enemy commander, then I think they're out of the game. So it can be a valid strategy to get the Wizard's Bond and then betray somebody. But it also lets you know like what general direction this player is. So maybe you don't want to build in that direction if you're thinking about getting along with them, having them be more of an ally or I guess a vassal. I don't know if you can vassalize other rulers, if that's like got a different term associated with it, or if it's not in the game. But I assume there's a way you can essentially turn another player into a tributary or a vassal. Um, but given that the independent cities are referred to as vassals, it probably uses a different term. Anyways, if they're willing to go for Wizard's Bond, it'll just say it's a deal here when you click on the Wizard's Bond in the negotiating screen. If they want something, they'll request, I think, either gold, mana, or maybe special resources at that point where it says it's a deal. And if they like you enough, they may come to you and say, I'd like to give you a Wizard's Bond and some mana or gold. You can choose the Wizard's Bond and mana or the Wizard's Bond and gold in this situation. So that's pretty cool. I like this interface. It seems pretty clean and it's neat that you get to decide what you want to get from them. They don't just say, okay, I'm offering you gold. Um, Kind of reminds me of how you could like counter propose things, but it's almost just like more streamlined and user friendly. So that's pretty cool. I'm a big fan of the way this looks in general. If it's successful, this is just kind of like what it looks like when you get to that point. After that, we have some pronouncements. So pronouncements are sub-options which enable you to make statements or declarations which will affect your relationship with the opposing ruler. Right now, it looks like the relationship with Fangir here is 450 or trusting. So if we go down to this page, you can see there's a lot of different things affecting the relationship, like the fact that empires don't break treaties. That just kind of like goes well with this guy's personality trait, being an artisan merchant. There's also the fact that you've done a declaration of friendship, you made positive first contact. Um, but yeah, I think that you can also go in there and say, I would like to make a pronouncement of friendship or rivalry, which will make them like you more or dislike you more, which can lead to them trying to attack you or trying to pursue trading with you or a more like formalized relationship or allegiance or alliance if you're interested in going that route. I believe you can say I want claims in the pronouncement menu as well. Uh, it's not just building trust, it's also looking at things like grievances. Right now, this says that there's some grievances that were picked up from the player character by capturing an ancient wonder, which the other player, Fangir, had, or the other ruler had claims on. Um, so I think you can trade for those claims in the negotiate screen, but if you wanted to make a declaration, you go to the pronouncements thing and you'll see things like declaration of friendship, declaration of rivalry, fabricate grievance, um, denounce somebody. So I think if you denounce somebody, that leads them to want to create grievances against you, just like generally making the relationship more negative. That doesn't cost any gold, but it does cost quite a bit of mana. It only takes one turn to do, whereas fabricating grievance that takes 5 turns. So I think you could, if you wanted to create hostile relationships, incentivize them to attack you, denouncing might be the more cost-effective way to do it. But you can't guarantee that you're going to war, and you can't declare the war. Um, so yeah, I don't remember exactly if declaring friendship does anything with grievances, but that stuff, the whole like getting rid of them, I believe that's hidden in the negotiate menu, which I think we saw earlier. Yeah, it just looks like this. It just kind of brings up all the little options that you have accessible at that point in the game. Let's move on to after our grievances here to um, see some of the other things you can negotiate for. So you can negotiate for open borders, allowing you to walk through other people's territory. If you don't have this, just walking in another person's claimed territory or in their sectors. So I think they call them provinces in Age of Wonders 4. If somebody just walks through that, that would create grievances, which I don't think have a like a cooldown. I don't think they go away in 10 turns. I think you have to buy them off. So getting open borders early is something that's really quite valuable. And then I don't think there's any cost to just having that up and running. So might as well just get it up and keep it up for the rest of the game if you can. You're going to need to be above 50 relationships. So being at 450 means they're way above that at this point. But there's other players on the map that you'd have to increase the relationship level, maybe through a declaration of friendship, in order to get them to take open borders. But you also need the wizard's bond. That's kind of like the opening thing towards the diplomacy part of the game. It's like the opening move that allows you to do things like open borders. And I think the other one is the province claiming pact, so that you can actually build near each other, which is a double-edged sword. It allows you to take more territory that you think would be nice within your space without worrying about them getting angry at you and wanting to attack you for this space. But also means that they can kind of like build in all the gaps that you've left in your space, which means you can have less opportunities to build your economy in the late game. So it's a trade-off. You have to really take that into consideration when you go for a province claim pact. If it looks like you're going to be able to grab more of their space surrounding their territory than they can of yours, then I would go for this. But otherwise, probably not. It's been a while since I played a single player in Age of Wonders, so I'm interested to see how this kind of shakes things up. Should be similar to Planetfall, but better. Right, so you can say that you want to pay for grievance in, I think, the negotiate menu. And right now, since there's 6 grievances, that's going to cost 60 gold to pay off. Later on, this other leader, Sinrin, they had 100 gold's worth of grievances, or 10 grievances. It looks like it's 10 gold for each grievance. So if you get lots of grievances against another player, it's going to cost you a lot of gold to just pay that off. And another option you can do is, if they have grievances against you that can negatively impact things, so just forgiving them if they don't have resources or they don't like you, you can just choose to forgive them, which at the very least will give you alignment points. So just having a bunch of grievances that you can forgive could be a strategy for good guy players to get to their really positive alignment, to make it easier to deal with like vassal cities and do more of like the Rally of the Liege type mechanics. Pretty interesting. Yeah, I don't think this player is willing to buy the grievances, the 5 grievances for 50 gold. But yeah, if you do that, then I think you get +5 alignment, maybe one for each grievance. That'd be interesting if that's how it worked. But it may just be you forgive all of them. I can't remember what they chose in the end, or if they actually decided to do that in the end. So Fangreer, he's trespassing. They don't have open borders on turn 27. So when Fangreer's doing that, they can just go in, forgive those things, or sell them back the grievances, which I think is what they ended up doing. Fangreer really liked it when they sold him the grievances, but there are other players that had different personalities who are like, we don't want you doing that, so stop, please. Um, at this point in the match, they'd gone to a declaration of friendship. So I forget what it said when you click on declaration of friendship, if there's any upfront cost, but it looks like right here it says that this costs you 10 gold of upkeep for a certain amount of turns, and it increases by 10 gold for each additional declaration. So if you have one of these with one ruler, it's going to cost more to get one with the second ruler. It's going to go from 10 gold for one ruler to 30 gold for both rulers. 10 plus 20 takes you to that 30. And then after that, it would be, I think that would go to 30 for the third one. Unless I'm doing my math wrong, I'm misunderstanding how this is designed. But yeah, generally, it says that the modifier will increase towards 300 plus 300 relationships, and there's something about here about -400, up to plus, no, you can get up to +400 relationship there. Interesting. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting details here hidden within these tooltips that I think you can miss at your first glance. This is another ruler who has different opinions of the player, because of their interactions, but also just their personality trait. This guy is a revolutionary diplomat, so Let's see. They didn't like that their player was trading away grievances. That led to -50 relationship with this player. So it made Fangir like the player more, but this ruler disliked Trixie. The player controlled the ruler less for trading away grievances with Fangir. There's also the fact that there's grievances on this side. I think you see -10 is an unjust war if you declare, but they would have a justification for going to war here. It's interesting that it's not like, if you've got 10 grievances, the other player's 10 grievances. I think that's how it worked with Planetfall. Um, the Revolutionary Diplomat does like that the player has vassals. That's interesting. They don't like trading grievances, but they do like the relationship of overlord and vassal or something along those lines. I guess it's being diplomatic. That's interesting. Maybe creating grievances and trading away isn't like diplomatic, which I get. The other guy's more about forgiveness, and this guy's more about like, hey, let's be cool from the beginning. There's no need to like do some silly stuff that makes people angry and then happy. Um, Apparently, this says something about how there's a personal preference. Yeah, that gave +100 relationship, and I think the game just decided to tell them that at this point. It's kind of cool that it tells you that without you having to go hover over empire relations. It just kind of lets you feel like you're the leader and you're actually seeing these like messages come into your inbox or like whatever thing the wizards use in Age of Wonders. Um, this ruler liked it that you're trading away grievances, that Trixie was trading away grievances. We see here why this leader really dislikes Trixie. There's alignment. They actually like the alignment. They feel threatened. That has to do with the military level of both players. I believe that might have to do with the fact that they had a tier 4 in Trixie's Empire pretty early on, which is something that they talked about changing so that you can't just use Rally the Lieges to get tier 4s on turn 20. It's a little bit too good too fast. Right, we did talk about personality a little bit earlier, but this is a screenshot actually showing off Fangir's likes and dislikes. They like trading away grievances. They like empires who don't treaty break. That's an interesting way of wording that. Um, they don't like players who start wars, and they don't like empires with a weak military. Yeah, so you got to be able to protect your stuff, or else this guy's going to be like, "What are you doing? Build a military, build a military, so we can all protect each other." Um, What's interesting is I think the player got called into an award later on, and technically that counts as starting a war. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense to me. I feel like maybe that's not uh, working quite as intended, but just how the system is built. It'd be kind of cool if that changed eventually. Um, right here, there's something about base global income on grievances. I don't know what that means. I hadn't noticed that until just now. If you wanted to, you can declare war without any grievances, but it's gonna be pretty bad for you. It will make it so all the other rulers that aren't allied are going to have 10 grievances against you. That's quite a bit. It's going to make all the vassal cities hate you a little bit. Um, it will make the allegiance go down. It'll both make them hate you and make it harder for them to like you more over time, or become more of your empire over time. Anything that's not a vassal will also hate you the same amount. It's interesting saying vassal cities and non-vassal cities, and I'm not sure. That's just talking about independent cities. I think both of those could fall into the same category as independent, but like vassals are kind of like less independent. They're partially part of your empire. It's complicated, and then your just global income in general goes down. I think that's maybe of Imperium or everything. It could be just everything goes down by 20%. So pretty bad. You want to avoid wars without justification, but every once in a while you're like, I need to go to war now. I need that city. So I'm gonna take this for the next 3 turns and we'll adjust later. All right, yeah, no, I just took another look at this image and I saw that the base global income -20%, and then that green icon is like the green icon above. That's supposed to be Imperium, so you lose 20% of your Imperium income. Not as bad as 20% of everything, but still a pretty big deal. Imperium is a pretty big limiting factor when it comes to like founding cities and all the other interesting things you can do with your um, with your empire. Next, we have just a little bit more about how you can get people to go to war with you. If you don't want to make a declaration, if you don't have grievances, you can insult them, you can build next to them, you can upset them so that they declare war on you and you don't need grievances. I think getting declared on it just is like, it doesn't have any of these modifiers associated with it. If anything, I think you get some grievances, or you get whatever modifiers the person who attacking you is getting. If they get any bonuses to their morale or their production, I think you might get that as well. Um, the defensive pact is something that's worth pursuing so that if somebody does declare war on you, you can have somebody else in the fight. But I think the AI will also take the defensive pacts into consideration so that they don't end up fighting um, twice as many forces as they were expecting. So it can just be used to discourage people from attacking you. You're going to need to be at peace with all rulers. Both players, I believe, have to be at peace with all rulers. You need to have a wizard bond, and your empire relationship needs to be quite a bit higher than if you're going to get a mage's bond or a pact claiming thing where you can go build on the other person's claims. Um, and one thing I forgot to mention earlier is the trade value number there. It says that they will get more trade value than you will out of this. It says the player Trixie gets 600 trade value and Vanger gets 780 trade value. I don't know how that number is calculated exactly. It's a really interesting number because I think that it's how the game decides if it's going to give you resources or ask for resources in order to make a treaty. Um, I have to assume that it's looking at the military strength and just saying, I would love that military to help me out in my wars, so you get a lot of trade value from this specific pact. Hard bargaining led to Fangir, the AI. That's a personality trait. The hard bargaining is a personality trait from Fangir. That led to him asking for quite a bit of gold to get a defensive pact. Um, he did he did have higher trade value, but not 100. I'm not sure why I said 111. I think that has to do with the cost here. They asked for 299 to get the defensive pact, and then a turn later, the situation changed, and they're like, "Okay, we really need an ally. We'll take the defensive pact without money." Um, yeah, it's interesting. It's saying that you should pay since they have more trade value. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure exactly where that number comes from. Um, but yeah, after that, they were talking about how you should ally your allies so that you won't have your ally waging war against you. If, say, you have an enemy who's allied to your ally and the enemy declares war on you, your ally has to decide if they're going to help that other ruler or if they'll help you out or if they'll stay just neutral and not get involved. So in general, you want to make allies with your allies. So Fangir was friendly with Sinrin, I think it is, and they decided to get a declaration of friendship with two players, I believe, which is expensive. It's 200 gold to get the thing started. It can be ended at any point during pronouncements, and it has a pretty sizable gold income. So I probably wouldn't do more than two of these in many matches, in most matches, but you might need it. You might need it depending on what the map generates for you to deal with. Um, yeah, this also mentions something about grievances being reduced by 40%. Not bad. Not sure how the rounding works on that, but usually round up, right? Threat level is actually broken down here. We mentioned threatened being a factor in how much a empire likes you. It's not going to affect war justification, but it will affect empire relationships a little bit. And it looks like you are in need of an ally, so they feel less threatened because the player is all by themselves. But they are uh, they're being threatened because they are supported by allies, and does that mean they aren't supported by allies? I'm a little confused. You are needed an ally. Maybe Fangir needs an ally, so they're more likely to feel less threatened. Not entirely making sense, but these are the four things that are impacting why they feel threatened. Um, the size of the empire that I think Trixie has is a little bit too big. There's too many cities compared to Fangir's, so they're scared. And then your army is, I think, stronger than theirs, so there's a threat to them. So yeah, Red is saying that there's a threat to them, making them feel threatened. They are supported by allies. Seems like something that would make them feel less threatened, but it's got the red hue to it. And then um, I think they are in need of an ally, so they maybe you both are in need of an ally, so they feel less threatened because of that. That would make sense in the green column. Um, yeah, we mentioned earlier how they thought that a lot of this is due to the T4 unit, which they're going to change in the future. There's a call to war against Carissa. They started talking about how call to war works a little bit more at this point. If they take this call to war to defend Binger from Carissa, then um, Fangir is gonna be mad because they technically started a war. He doesn't like treaty breakers, and this would like also make them mad. So he's just gonna be mad one way or another. If you accept the call to war, you started a war. If you deny it, you broke a treaty. So he's just gonna be mad, and I think for that reason they decide to accept the call to war to help Hambringer. But he's like on the opposite side of the map, so it's almost more more I don't know, for reputations than anything else. There isn't many money ways for them to affect the war in the short term, so they're just helping out and getting the benefits from the modifiers that have to do with relationship and allegiance and grievances, I think, and personality traits and all those fun things. Is that it for diplomacy? We see something about war justification balance. Yeah, so I think you get just as much justification as the other person, or you just get plus 20 because of the treaty. Declining it will give Ham 10 against you. Oh, I didn't know that would be a grievance against you. That's pretty interesting, but it would make sense. He expects a response within 2 turns, so you don't have to decide immediately. That's interesting. Oh, and breaking it is considered an act of evil. That's so cool. There's a lot of fun numbers in here that I didn't see the first time through. I don't know if you've seen this interface here for the diplomatic overview, but I like how you can see your cities and your vassal cities in one place, and just generally how happy they are and how quickly they are moving towards their next level. It seems like a nice clean UI, so it's awesome. I like that kind of um, thing because it saves time. It's an easy thing to overlook. The last thing that I guess we could include in diplomacy is meeting this cool leader, Sanguine the Toner. They just got a nice little design to them, and I can't tell if this is a randomly generated leader or if this is one that is actually from a story. That Dev seemed pretty excited to see this person, but I think that's just going to happen a lot with the way randomly generated stuff works in this game. So next on the list we have signature skills, and I have to admit I'm still a little confused how these options are generated. I thought for a second that we would have one set for Wizard Kings and another one for champions, and maybe a different set for the heroes, because it seemed like for a second that we had 8 different things than what we saw in the last stream. I think, yeah, this screenshot I think is from one of the previous streams, and as you can see, we have Visions of Woe, Demon Step, Frostfire Detonation, Summon Animal, Holy Retribution, and Draining Blade. Whereas this is just 6 entirely different things. And I figured, yeah, that was maybe these top one was from Champions and the bottom one was from Wizard Kings. But then later on, I saw a little mixture of what we have above here and some other things like Rallying Blessing now comes with the choice between Mana Unchained, Reckless Rage, and a few other things, whereas up here it was Blink and Assassinate instead of, I think, just those first two. We still have Warding Bond, Mass Rejuvenation. No, Virulent Outbreak is here, and down here it's Mass Rejuvenation. So yeah, it's not entirely clear to me exactly where things are coming from, and if there is a dev watching this, I would love it if at some point there was something included in that tooltip that actually told you where these things came from. Like, what is the source of Blink? Is that coming from some of the choices you made with your affinities, or your is it coming from the hero's backgrounds, or something else like that, right? I just love to know a little bit more so I can make more of a plan for how do I get certain signature skills when I'm playing a certain play style. But yeah, first, that's I think now that we've gotten that out of the way, we can actually look at what Blink says. Blink says that this unit is going to be able to teleport up to, I think, 6 hexes from where it started its blink. So you can move to the edge of your movement range, then move another, I think, 6 hexes is quite a lot of movement. And after you do that, your unit is going to get 40% evasion for 1 turn. I think if you do that, it doesn't say leave action. I think that's just you end your turn with 40% evasion behind the enemy, which could be very valuable. But maybe the unit dies because 40% evasion, I think, can be avoided with things like AoEs. And there's a few of those. There's a few things, like I think one of these spells is an AoE. I forget which one it was. Um, but yeah, I think it would be Frostfire Detonation. It's not like there's too many options that you have to weigh. I think we saw a Vision of Will last time, so I don't really go into that. It's another AoE. It does fumble. Um, causes fumble to a bunch of units, but it's full action. You can't be in a zone of control. Blink can be used if something's standing next to you, so it can be a good way to get your range units away from melee. Mana Unchained is pretty cool. It gives Starblade to a bunch of units, 3 Starblades, so it's like stacking the Starblades, I think, um, to units in a 1 hex radius. That's another AoE. It's an always hit, full action, can't be used when things are right next to the wizard. Um, it gives Strengthened, which I think is just like more damage if you're using physical damage, but I could be wrong about that. We have Reckless Rage after that, which would give you plus 30% melee attack for 3 turns. It's free action, so cool. It gives you the ability to sunder. Does it? Oh no, it sunders your own defense, and it sunders your own resistance, which I think gets rid of bolstered defense or bolstered resistance, or if there's none of that, it reduces your defenses or your resistances below their values, making them like weaker to either physical or magical damage. This is only used once per battle, actually. Interesting, compared to the Mana Chain has a cooldown of 4. This one has a cooldown of 4, cooldown of 2. So yeah, there's a lot of variability and strategies within these. Rallying Blessing makes it so units are rallied, which I assume gives them more morale, but it also gives them more resistance to damage, magic damage and physical damage. Range 4, full action. It's pretty cool defensive ability. Assassinate, as you may have guessed, would be for offense. It's going to have a slight chance of killing an injured target, and that the chances are lower if um, the if the target has more health points. If you take them down to 50% health, then I have to imagine it's something like a 50% chance of killing the injured target. This reminds me of one of my favorite skills, or not skills, operations in Age of Wonders Planetfall. You could do something like this as Shakarn, where if you knocked some units' health down enough, you could take a dice roll to see if you just can remove them from the map. Which, if that doesn't go in your favor, it's very costly and it can throw a fight for you. But if it's a fight you're thinking you're probably going to lose anyways, it can make a big swing. You can go for the highest tier unit, just put everything you got into it, and remove them from the field when they should probably be able to stay alive another turn. Pretty cool. I like that ability. It's got a cooldown of 2, so I think that's actually pretty valuable. It's something that I will probably try and put on some of my heroes in the beginning in the early days. Hoarding Bond makes it so that damage sustained by target-friendly units is transferred to this unit with a 20% reduction. I remember that being how a Kiriko unit worked in Planetfall, and I'm pretty sure this is actually a mechanic that was carried over from earlier Age of Wonders. For me, I always refer to Planetfall because that was the one that I had the most experience with, and I've played it recently. Uh, so not bad in general. That's great on a unit that can heal itself if it's like passive regeneration. Then yeah, then taking a little bit of damage, it's not bad. You can even afford to send a unit forward, have them take some retaliations because that damage will then be sent back to this unit, which then can be regenerated. It's cool. I like that mechanic in general. Um, Dark Ritual says enemies in one hex radius take 14 damage. That's a pretty big damage for something that's just on a unit in an AoE um, ability, and all of the corpses turn into zombies. Wow, so not only do you get damage, you get the ability to create units, which I don't think would stay on the map after the fight. But if that generates units that you can use later on, that's pretty cool. I think there's a lot of mechanics that allow you to do things with zombies, like consume zombies and such. Um, Maybe combine them, kind of like skeletons, create a bone golem. I don't know exactly. Virulent Outbreak makes it so that units in a 2 hex radius have a 90% chance of being diseased and poisoned. I think one is a damage over time, and one is a morale penalty, and both of them probably reduce your resistance to blight damage or nature damage. I forget what they call it in Age of Wonders. But yeah, that sounds okay. It's a pretty high chance to apply those status effects in a pretty wide radius. If you're playing somebody who's got low resistance to status effects, that's pretty valuable, I'd say. The next topic we're going to talk about is infestations. This one right here, Astral Rift, has a stack of units that are patrolling the domain for the next 3+ turns. And I think after that, if nothing is done to it, then it starts to try and invade surrounding territories. Um, but at this point, the player still controls Glitter Grove. It's not attached to any cities. And when the AI went on top of Glitter Grove, they didn't have to fight any militia like they would in Age of Wonders Planetfall. And I don't think that would have actually changed if that was attached to a city. I believe the little sectors that people grab aren't defended by militias, but you have to siege down the city center. So keeping armies around to defend those little locations near your cities, those that you've actually spent resources improving, can be worthwhile. You may want to just keep a stack around to chase off enemies every once in a while. Maybe like one that's more like a go explore stack, and one that's more like a that's defend the cities. Um, so that meant that they had to then send a stack over to take care of that of those units, and then when they ended up getting the ability to annex that sector into a city, they got this little notification saying that if you do that, there's going to be units that just keep getting sent in this general direction. So just double checking, you feel like you can defend that, right? Otherwise, you may want to annex something else first. It's like got the domain. The AI just decided that would be a nice place to own. I'm not sure how the AI does that, but it's kind of funny that it went up north all the way to Glitter Grove because it looked like it just kind of went directly for it for one reason or another. Maybe the AI gets some benefits from taking over Ancient Wonders or something, and or is just simply programmed to try and take those things over faster. Yeah, you can see down here at the bottom of this screenshot, it went from Astral Rift past, I think, 3 other sectors just to get to Glitter Grove, and it might have 1 or 2 right of there, but pretty much everything it took it north. And that actually, now looking at the mountains around it, looks like just kind of the only opportunity it had to really expand. Maybe could have gone a little bit right before it went up, but it just decided to go up. So after killing the patrolling army, they got a message about a new one spawning in 3 turns. and then it would just start patrolling again. I think it would spawn all the way down at the bottom and have to make its way back up to Glitter Grove. So it won't be able to attack Glitter Grove in 3 turns. It just spawns in the domain, I believe, down at the center, kind of like the city center. I think that's where the units spawn, um, right in the middle of the place that says Astral Rift. So there's this cool little skill that they considered taking because they were about to clear out 2 infestations on the same turn. They spend 50 Imperium, they could get this thing that makes it so that destroying an infestation will make a free city, um, get 300 relationships. There's just relations rather, and that will also give you uh, what does that say again? It says destroying an infestation or conquering a free city. Okay, so one of those two things gives you plus 300 relationships with all other 3 cities for 10 turns. So we're looking at the first part. When you destroy an infestation, pretty much all free cities are going to like you for that amount for 10 turns. Plus 300 is pretty significant and can make them become your vassal a lot quicker, or if they don't like you, it can make it so that they start liking you and you can start going down the path of vassalage or just trading with them if that's all you really need. Maybe they have some magic materials you need to complete a set or something along those lines. Um, right, yeah, there's no military in those provinces. If we look in this image, another thing came over and attacked the quarry. So even though it was attached to a city, there was no like colony militia that spawned to defend it. Um, And I assume, yeah, this works the same for enemy commanders. If so, then having invisible scouts that can just pick off people's provinces can be so annoying in multiplayer, but also something you probably need to be aware of and to try and do if you are able to scout out somebody before they can scout you out. That'll just keep them from being able to send out as many armies in multiple directions to clear out things and get that momentum that's valuable in Age of Wonders. But hey, it's a balancing thing. You just gotta make sure that you're not trying to go for too much offense or too much defense, just the right amount based on the map conditions. Um, yeah, I think that's his infestation. So now we're just gonna move into the just generally interesting things that I noticed along the way. This quality's really poor because I think I took this one on my phone. Um, uh, the Mask of Precision is one of the items they got for actually attacking and clearing out the spawner towards the end of the stream. They do that. Sorry for the spoilers, but you know it wasn't even a close fight. They completely destroyed the AI because they had some pretty good units, and you know the devs know how to play this game. They've been playing it for a while. So Mask Precision, not bad. It's a tier 2 like helmet basically. Gives you +1 defense, plus 20% accuracy. And you also have the Book of Siegecraft, which they also got, as well as I think a bunch of resources: 43 research, 98 gold, 62 mana, and 107 food. That's going to grow a lot of cities, I'm sure. Um, so the Siegecraft makes it so that you get Siegebreaker on all units in the army. I don't think they showed off Siegebreaker, but I think that just makes it so that you can attack obstacles. They get like the Demolisher trait, um, but I'm not sure because it says Siegebreaker. It's slightly different, right? It might be like, um, you know, if you're getting siege, you can break a siege using this book or something like that, and then you get certain abilities or modifiers based on that very specific criteria. I forgot exactly when they got this, but I think it was the other infestation, kind of like the smaller infestation. The Astral one is far scarier, and I think gives better rewards as a result of that. This one gave just 76 food and 174. I think that's building production, not draft for units. So you know, not terrible. If you're trying to build a building, that could really cut down the number of turns quite significantly. Belt of the Berserker is interesting because it makes it so that your unit doesn't die if they go into the Berserk mode. They can't die that turn, but they also will attack, I think, anything close to it. So you don't want to do this when you're just surrounded by your allied units. You want to do it when you're only surrounded by enemy units. Like run your unit all the way forward and just let it reach 30% HP from a retaliation, or even just shoot it yourself. You can like put it inside of a range where AoE would take it below 30%, and that's fine. That's not a big deal at all. Um, but you'd want to do that only if it can't target your allied units, especially if your allied units are the thing that's closest to it, because I think proximity is a big deal when units like this go insane or berserk. Berserk is like insane, I believe, um, but it might have some other benefits that help you out. Strengthen's not bad. We talked about that earlier. I think that helps with physical damage. It may help with magic damage, but I don't think so. Amulet of Vitality just gives you plus 10 HP. Straightforward item. Like having more HP is generally pretty good, although I think HP pools are pretty big compared to Age of Wonders Planetfall, but not like so massive when you compare to other Age of Wonders like classic games. The ones that were in the fantasy setting typically had, I think, more HP that you could get through leveling up your stuff. Because yeah, in Age of Wonders 3 there was something different than the prime rank system. There wasn't like a experience cap. You could just keep leveling and getting HP on your units. Next is the Wand of Blizzards. This will make it so that units in a 1 hex radius sustain damage. Um, they get slowed for 3 turns, which is massive if you're trying to keep like melee from getting too close to you, or even range, but I think it's better on applying it to melee units. It's a full action, 6 range, 24 damage, not bad at all. That actually seems pretty good. Like it's almost like more about doing damage than it is about applying stats effects, but slowed can be pretty good in certain situations. The Arcfire orb I don't even think is too different than the typical wand or orb that you would get as at the beginning of the game. It is tier 2, and it has a thing called I think is that quick stab, where you can just use a single action to do 36 damage. Actually, I did miss that. um, I think that actually has something pretty good on there, on top of the repeating attack there, which does a little bit, I think, of lightning and fire. Yeah, it's a mixture of two things. Pretty cool, pretty fun. So this is just a quick little event that allowed them to highlight a pretty interesting thing about the good alignment and the interactions you get with that. Pretty much basically, they're very expensive, but as you do it more, that cost goes down and the benefit becomes even better. So it's supposed to be kind of like a long-term investment thing. If you want to like go out and wage war, you can do that, but that's kind of like evil alignment. You might get some good momentum, but they've tried to make it so that if you want to be a good guy, that is something that isn't bad. It's just not great in the short term. It's more of a long-term strategy, and I'm interested to see how that actually works out in this version of Age of Wonders, because I think that that's kind of the direction they've been taking things. Um, and it could be cool. It could be pretty fun to see how these things interact with each other around like turn 60 through 100, because that's when things start to, that's like the real long term, and we haven't gotten to quite see that quite yet. I would really actually enjoy seeing them continue this playthrough until like the very end, but I don't know if that's what they're going to want to do. Next we have this building, which allows you to build animal units, and um, yeah, it's cool that they had the ability to do that, because if you go the nature route, having animals standing next to your other ones allow them to do more damage. And I think that the animal units might be different based on where you build the preserve, which would make sense. You build it in a desert, it'd be different animals than a forest. It doesn't say a specific animal, it just says various animal units. Uh, they are also discussing about where they should put it here. At first, they considered putting it in that middle one, replacing that farm, because I think it counts as a farm, right? It counts as a forester. Uh, but yeah, they decided that they didn't need the farms, that this would serve the purposes of a farm and create food. So might as well get rid of one of these. And then there's something about adjacency, I think, that they wanted to take advantage of as well. Uh, so by min-maxing, they placed it adjacent to more forests to get more production. By basically going for the northern one, they got more out of it. And um, I think that's important. If you want to like play for the long-term game, you need to understand how these adjacencies work with each other. Basically, I think somewhere along here it says that yes, you get +5 draft per adjacent province with forest. It doesn't have to be within your empires. They just have to be adjacent. I think if you go for that middle one, it's adjacent to I think a forest above it and maybe a little bit to the right. I don't think so though. Whereas the one above is looks like it's surrounded at least on two sides, maybe three or four. Not bad. I'll give you a lot more production, or not production, draft. I keep calling it production. They're similar in concept. Um, After that, they go over some events. We see the end of this one they started last week, where they showed off that you could get the Fireforge stone, making units 20% easier to build or just require less draft. I guess they still require the normal amount of gold, which is pretty important. But yeah, this will make it so that you can build your units a little bit quicker. And then just actually notice that quotes Fangir Rockborn, which is one of the guys on this map. This quote is from somebody on the map. Wow, interesting. I like that. Um, there's a couple different options here that I don't think they actually highlighted. They ended up just saying, "Oh, you got the Gilded Shield here in the first one. I want the Gilded Shield. I don't need these other things." And the Gilded Shield gives it the person you equipped +3 defense, and the people who attack it have a 30% chance of becoming gilded. And at first I thought that meant they just are like dead. It's kind of like an insta dead thing, but no, it's not quite that powerful. This makes it so that they are stunned for I think one turn, and then when the unit dies, the winner gains 20 gold unit um, per unit tier. So that means that uh, if you use this on a unit and then lose the fight, the winner, your opponent, will get the gold. But if you get a enemy gilded and then win the fight, you get quite a bit of gold. That will add up very quickly if you're able to manually fight and make it so that as many units become gilded as possible. This is very good, especially if you can retry the fight over and over again until you you just gild everything with minimal losses to HP. And yeah, this is an awesome ability, an awesome tier 3 weapon, secondary weapon. After that, we have more from the Planar Problems, which I just love this unit design. It's so cool. You can get a boon as well as a mysterious reward if you accept the quest. I think if you say the like weird no but not quite no, you can get something called an astral crisis, which is pretty bad in this situation because they have an astral affinity. It actually is worse for you if you have more affinity in that certain in the type of check they're doing here, and they have 7. They're like that's pretty much the worst situation this could be for an astral crisis. I think you can have like a chaos crisis and order crisis and all these other type of situations, but this one it just it's an astral sea creature. They took the astral affinity, so it's like yeah, just a lot of things kind of aligning, falling into place. But basically, you can lose mana, but you'll gain a unit and all of your cities will be sad. But in this situation, they're going to be like really, really sad for 6 whole turns. And I don't know if that'll lead to revolution, but you probably want to avoid it if that could happen. The Wind Ranger is a good unit, but I don't think it's worth that in like 9 times out of 10 like situations. Wind Barrier makes it so that they're harder to hit with physical ranged and magical attacks, which means that you want to use them. You want to use melee against these guys. I think ranged against wisps. It's an interesting interaction. Yeah, no, this is just saying that it's going to be worse for people who have more astral affinity. I think if you have a 0 on astral affinity, then this basically costs you mana to get a unit that you may not have access to. I think this guy's underneath like the wind tree or whatever tome it's called. Um, After that, we have the thing that they get at the end of completing the planar things. After accepting the quest and killing the units, they have the ability to get an evoker, but that evoker is a halfling construction or constructor um, from that race, and that means that they don't get the same enchantments that everybody who's part of your main species would. You can invite him to get some knowledge, or you can get some mana out of him. You can either get 182 knowledge and Amplified Mind change from 3 turns to 2 turns. Not sure what that means exactly, but the mana is more. It's just a bigger sum, and that means I guess that Amplified Mind is just something else that goes on top. I think I remember that being something about you get. Oh, it's saying that getting this knowledge will make it so they can research Amplified Minds a little bit quicker. Instead of 3 turns, it goes to 2 turns. Oh, that's cool. That's in the tooltip. That's actually quite useful. That's good for decision making. Mana works slightly differently. You don't usually. It just isn't like tracking up towards a goal in the same sense. All right. After that, we have the Bloody Edge Reforged. That's a weapon, a little sword. I don't think they actually completed this one. We just got to see that they were working towards it, and I'm sure that that's something that's been in previous games. It's cool to see things like that, like the characters, returning characters and returning items. So next we have 2 magic materials from one set right next to each other. It's pretty interesting. This Arcanium ore spawned, I think, just a province or a sector away from the focus crystals. They're pretty close to each other, and that means just getting one more and a city like either on top of one of these or right next to one of these would be amazing. In fact, I think, yeah, that would be a pretty good city if you're able to settle adjacent to both of these guys and just have those two be the first 2 provinces that, or yeah, the first 2 provinces you end up annexing. It could be quite powerful, especially when you consider that these magic materials allow you to build 2 different special province upgrades. One's called a conduit, and I think the other one is research related. Um, Magic materials also have their own battle effect. When they went to take over the Tranquility pool, they got this thing called Waves of Tranquility. Every 2 turns, all status effects on all units are dispelled, so their Star Blades will just disappear, which is, it's annoying, but it's not as bad as the status effect that they get in the fight at the end against the Astral Rift. I think that one actually turned their Star Blades into something that would hurt the units, would make them more vulnerable to damage. So it made it so the squishier units were in a bit more danger, but they had high enough tiers that it wasn't a problem in the end. Um, Next, we have the fact that you don't get stacking effects for having multiple magic materials. You're meant to collect one of each. If you have multiples, then you just trade it away to somebody else so that they can get benefit from it, and you can get some benefit to your economy from having that thing. Uh, this guy is willing to trade Haste Berries for 169 gold. That's pretty good because it completes a set. It's not cheap, but I don't think this guy has the like hard bargaining personality trait. So it could be more. Haste berries are just very useful in general. Uh, it says right here that haste berries reduce the time it takes to settle and absorb cities by 2 turns, and I think it usually takes 2 turns. So if you take that plus an empire skill, I think it happens instantly. It may even just happen instantly if you have haste berries, which sounds pretty powerful. If you're able to do that, then your economy is just going to develop a lot quicker. So getting that next to your capital, it really changes the momentum of things and could potentially make it impossible for other people to compete with somebody who has that right next to the capital. But I don't believe these spawn too close to where you spawn in. I think they're designed to be a couple sectors away at the very least. Um, After that, we see a couple more hero treats. Elementalist makes it so that the units gain, just the elemental units will gain experience 100% faster, and they will also have minus 20% unit upkeep, so you'll end up spending less mana on those elemental units. I don't believe you can make physical based elemental units. I think all of them do magic damage and have mana as an upkeep. Next, we have the nature affinity thing, which will make it so that this guy actually contributes +3 nature affinity to the empire. They mentioned in the previous stream that these traits will either give you a benefit in combat, a benefit to your economy, And this one is that third situation where it benefits your empire development, kind of like your progress through the empire skills. Pretty different and an interesting choice. I'm not sure how much I'm gonna like this option or how much I'll end up taking it, but I think for certain strategies, if you get like what you need here, if you're say really leaning into order and this gives you the order thing a little bit faster, that could be very, very valuable. Or if it just lets you um, synergize a strategy that otherwise would come online too late with your main strategy, that could be pretty cool too. I don't know. Could be very situationally awesome, and then other most of the time just useless. Devastator Spear. We saw this guy mentioned in one of the descriptions last week, but we didn't actually get to see in action. This guy blows himself up and does 30 bits of damage. I think 10 of them are thermal, and then 10 are like physical, maybe. I'm not entirely sure. It's kind of small, isn't it? Um, After that, we have a couple of skills that I don't think we've seen before. This distant evocation gives you +1 range on your magic attacks. Spell amplification makes it so that your spells do 20% more damage. I think it's just the tactical spells. That's not like all magic damage. It's just the kind of like operations in Age of Wonders Plan to Fall. There's things that cost casting points, but it's just for the tactical battles, I believe. Um, Next, we have Magecraft 2, which makes it so that they ignore magic attacks, ignore 2 status resistance, and you get more accuracy. Not bad. It's interesting that as you get higher tiers, I think these like start adding things to it to get even better. Arcane strength is more damage, some accuracy, and ignoring some status resistance. I can't quite read that number that it says for Imperium to reset skills, but it might be 10, it might be 100. If it's 100, I think that's probably fair. If it's only 10, that seems a little bit cheap. Um, Eagle Eye is a very good one. It's a very good, what do you call them, hero skill. It gives you +1 range and accuracy. The magic one that we looked at not that long ago just gave range, but I think this one requires that you have uh, one more, what you call it, warfare skill. They may have 3, I think I see right there at the top. Yeah, and so you need to get 4 in order to get to Eagle Eye. It's interesting how they have that like requirement of certain types of skills, not specific skills. Whereas this one, it doesn't look like it has a requirement, or if it does, they've already got 2 battle magic skills learned, and that might be all they need. Maybe they only needed 1, or they didn't need any at all in order to get to the point to unlock that. What else do we have here? A few other things we can talk about, like this gives you extra food on your farms, so makes farms even better. If you're going for the nature route, I have a feeling you're going to have some pretty big cities, so might as well just get them quicker. Um, you also can regenerate health a little bit quicker inside your own domain, which is very good in this situation on this map where they have no respite or no ability to generate health outside of their own territory. So you're going to be doing most regeneration within your friendly territory. May as well get extra benefit from it too. There's a button down, I think actually no, it's the top right above the mini map that you can click to go between the bottom and top layers. I don't know if I've seen that previously. We must have at some point, but I just got a screenshot of it. It's kind of small, but I think that's fine. That that's a button you're not going to use too often, and when you do, you're probably going to know where it is. Um, Putting it next to mini map makes sense so that you can change layers in that place. It's just kind of like putting all the things in. It's organized. All the similar things are in one place. Um, if you want to get more capture range, if you want to be able to attach things that are further away from the city center, that is going to cost you some gold, some production, and one way to reduce that is to meet your boost requirement. Oh, did I end up cropping this a little too low? I think that's supposed to say if you have 10 pops, then you boost up, then it boosts this so that you pay 30% less gold and 30% less production, making it cost less turns. So yeah, in general, that's pretty good. This will give them a new unit as well as on top of just getting more income and the ability to annex things that are further away from the center of the city. Uh, during the fights. Yeah, they did talk about how T5 units are resistant to morale penalties because it's kind of silly having them run away from a fight. I'm sure there's a lot of ways to stack morale penalties, and getting a T5 to run away when it could maybe turn the fight, may win the fight all on its own, and you lose just because you ran away. That could be pretty annoying. But yeah, I think the thresholds are, I think, the same here because this is talking about how if you go past -20, you go into low morale. If you go past -40, I think you go into very low, and showing if you go past -19, then you're in the low morale to high morale range, kind of like the neutral range. And this guy, he's almost dropped down to low morale here. But yeah, these when a unit dies, it's not as bad as when like a normal unit watches an ally die. Usually it's like -3, I think, for tier ones, -8 for tier twos, and it's -3, I think, for tier ones here, and maybe -4 for tier twos or something along those lines. Interesting that flanking attacks reduce morale. That's actually something I hadn't noticed until just going back and looking at this screenshot right now. We don't have a lot else to say here, do we? We have some tomes to look at. The Tome of Scrying makes it so that you can, what does it say? Ignore penalties from obscuring. Oh, yay! So when people are hiding in foliage, you can hit them a little bit more easily. They probably still will try and hide in the foliage, but it won't benefit them. That's interesting. I bet that will open up a lot of interesting decisions and strategies that you can take advantage of. Uh, After that, we have Restore the Land, which is kind of like their plan long term for this map. They want to make it so that everything is no longer desolate and covered in nice woods, because that's like an elven thing to do, right? Um, Tom actually used this little lock symbol, which I think Jordy mentioned in one of my other videos or posts about how I hadn't noticed that you can lock things, and that means if you pick something else, the thing that you locked in will appear the next time you get the ability to research something. Or I think if you just want to change research, you can switch over to it at any point if you use that lock. But yeah, it's a fun way to make things a little bit less random. But I don't know. That's neat, but I'd rather have 4 abilities to choose from than the ability to lock something into place. I like how Stellaris lets you get more alternative research options because it makes the randomness less random. It feels like you're actually able to make decisions yourself versus just being like, this is the game you're gonna play now. Good luck. um, Astral Echo counter they mentioned earlier. Not sure why I have that here. Oh right, because it wasn't. I don't think they showed the counters actually at the top of the screen. It mentions the building too that you get the benefit from, right? Yeah, it's cool. All right. And the last thing we have here is that they evolved their spider. So evolution's definitely in game. We saw it. It doesn't look like there's a special UI thing that indicates that they've turned into their new thing, but you do see the spider. It's the second to last unit in the bottom list. You do see that it has a slightly different badge. Might be able to crop that easily actually and then zoom in. Just give me a second to do that, because I do think that's worth highlighting. His has like little stars all the way around it. I think that means he's kind of like reached prime rank. But when certain units do that, I believe they turn into a different unit. This T1 turns into this T3 when it gets a certain amount of experience. And that's everything I have for you today. Thanks for joining me. I'm looking forward to seeing what we get to see on Thursday. And we'll probably be doing some more deep dives this month. I'll see you around. Have a good one.